As I was driving with my teenage daughter just yesterday, we stopped at a traffic light. There were at least 10 or 12 cars in front of us, and we could clearly see that the signal had been green for quite some time. Not seeing any of the vehicles move, the teenager that she is, my daughter, got really annoyed. And she asked me, "Mom, don't you think the response time of everybody is really slow?" Not wanting my own response time to be slow, I immediately replied, "What are you talking about? Their response time is really fast. As soon as the signal turned amber before this, everybody reached out for their cell phones. They hadn't checked their social media for a kilometer." This is how fast our reaction time actually is. And then we waited for the signal to turn green again. Hi, I'm Dr. Rashmi Kulkarni, one of the co-founders of Next Solutions, a microbiome resource platform that provides end-to-end solutions globally. The topic that I want to talk about is very close to my heart. When we talk about human evolution, we hear this all the time because we are talking about evolution in terms of what we can eat, what we can do, what the human body can tolerate, what our body has adapted to. So when we talk about human evolution, we talk about our bodies as if we have evolved in a sterile environment, as if we are these notobiotic or germ-free animals. It reminds me of the experiments that were done on several germ-free mice. So these mice, the experimental animals that are very commonly used in many labs across the world, were bred for several generations in sterile environments. So these are called germ-free mice. These have not seen or encountered germs in their entire life. So the experiment that was done was when a fecal sample or a stool sample was transplanted from a normal, healthy human being to the intestines of these mice, they still remained normal. And guess what a lot of scientists have done? They have transplanted fecal samples from deceased individuals or individuals that have some kind of a manifestation of a disease. And they saw the same symptoms replicated in the mice in a few months. For example, if the sample was taken from a diabetic individual, the mouse started showing symptoms of diabetes. If it was taken from an autistic individual, the mouse started showing symptoms of autism. Was that a transfer of DNA? Probably it was, but not the mouse DNA. It was the DNA of the bacteria that were transferred from the fecal sample to these mice. The reason I'm giving this example is that when we are talking about human evolution, we often forget that we have an invisible organ, which is our microbiome. Why is that important? So let us step back and look closely at what human evolution really means. So in this, I want to give a simple example of when a baby is born. So when I watched videos, I remember watching videos on Animal Planet, very fascinated with how animals go about their daily lives, how they are catching their prey, how predators behave, how the prey are trying to run away. And in this, I realized that there was one video that I saw. It was quite interesting. It was the birth of a deer. When the deer was born, when the calf was born, within a few minutes, it started walking. It was trying to walk. At that moment, I thought that, this is strange. This doesn't happen in humans. And then I remember watching another video where a similar thing was seen in cows. So cows give birth. The calf is expected, or it starts walking on its own within a few minutes. Because if it doesn't do that, it actually starves. And it is supposed to figure it out on its own how to get mother's milk. The mother is not going to carry it. The mother is not going to teach or give instructions on how to do that. It is supposed to figure it out itself. But when we talk about human babies, the story is completely different, isn't it? When a human baby is born, it is completely dependent on the caregivers. It needs a lot of care because the baby is spending 50% of its energy on the development of its brain. The development of the brain comes at the expense of delaying this kind of development, where the baby actually does not learn to walk for several months. It does not learn to become independent for several years. This is the price that the baby pays for developing the size of the brain that humans have. Because the brain is a metabolically expensive organ. If we again step back and look at the evolution, how did the brain develop? The size of the brain has grown immensely compared to that of primates because of improved nutrition. Where did we get this improved nutrition from that primates were not getting? This is because the human brain requires or spends at least 20% of the energy as compared to other animals where they only spend 6 to 10%. So if we think of this huge expense required for the developing brain, where does it come from? Where does the size of the brain come from? There are three important things that I can think of if we go back and look at the human evolution as well as what happened in the past few million years after humans evolved. There was invention of stone tools that allowed improved protection from predators, that improved hunting opportunities for humans, that meant eating a variety of things that could not be consumed earlier. The second thing that happened was the invention of fire. When humans started lighting fire, they started cooking with it. Suddenly, a lot more food was bioavailable for humans. Humans could get a lot more nutrition from the food because they learned to eat many more things that they could not consume before. The third and very important thing that happened was discovering the process of fermentation or consuming fermented foods. What this allowed was a very important secret that most people do not think of: delegating a part of our digestion to the wonderful gut microbiome. Although all animals have a gut microbiome, the human gut microbiome is even more special. It allows us to digest many more things. And this is a delegation of digestion that humans have achieved with the use of fermented foods, with the process of cooking, with the use of tools, has allowed human evolution to move in a direction where the human brain is much bigger, where it can actually use this much energy. We are getting these nutrients because our gut microbiome is helping us digest the food that we cannot digest. We have a long evolutionary history here. So again, I go back to give an example of the baby. When a baby is born, during the process of childbirth, a baby receives its first gift, which is the mother's microbiome. And do you know what this microbiome does? This set of wonderful bacteria that colonize the infant's gut, they help the infant digest mother's milk. Isn't it very surprising that milk has many important constituents? But if I think of two, there's one that is lactose. That is a sugar that the baby can digest because it makes an enzyme called lactase. This helps the baby digest the lactose part of it. But the other sugars, the human milk oligosaccharides, cannot be digested by the baby. Why would nature make something that the baby cannot digest? The mother is making milk that is tailored for the baby. Why would it be evolutionarily beneficial for the baby? The beauty of this lies in what the baby receives from the mother. These wonderful bacteria, Bifidobacterium, lactobacilli. They are the ones that are digesting these human milk oligosaccharides. They colonize the gut in an infant. They help the infant digest this part of the milk. This is how the infant gets complete nutrition from the milk. So if we say that humans are not meant to drink milk, we do not make the enzymes to digest the human milk oligosaccharides. but evolutionarily we have received the gift of our microbiome. So when we talk about ensuring that the baby continues getting the supply, these bacteria also come from the mother's milk itself. This ensures a steady supply of these bacteria. Isn't this so beautiful that we have evolved to have this symbiotic relationship with the bacteria? And they set the tone for a beautiful, diverse gut microbiome later on that impacts all aspects of the baby's health. When the baby turns 5, this is probably when the baby stops producing lactase, the enzyme that is required to digest lactose. But guess what? A lot of people, if we look at how many people are consuming milk after the age of 5, how are they still able to digest it if they have stopped making lactase? The secret again lies in their gut microbiome. If we think of the foundational probiotic strains that make up our gut microbiome, majority of them are bacteria. And these bacteria also have lactobacilli, bifidobacterium. All of these are lactic acid bacteria. They are the ones digesting that lactose for us, the lactose to lactic acid. That is why we can still digest milk. Now, I'm not saying that we should or should not drink milk. The problem with milk now compared to the milk that humans consumed several centuries ago is that the milk itself is very, very different. Milk today has a lot of additions like antibiotics, like hormones, because the animals are forced to lactate. So these are the issues. And then the processing that happens later, the pasteurization of milk, the sterilization of milk, and in addition, the homogenization of milk. These are the processes that make it very far from its natural state. These are the problems. So I'm not saying whether we should drink milk or not drink milk, but the point I'm trying to make here is that what we should consider as evolution is actually a co-evolution of not just our genetics. We are talking about the genetics of the bacteria, of other microbes that live inside and on our bodies, because they are our invisible organ. So talking about the evolution of bacteria or the other microbes, let us look at another example. So we had a friend of mine who came to us asking for help with her digestive issues. She had been suffering from IBS for 20 years. She was not able to eat a lot of things that she was previously eating. So after several visits to several doctors, she still was not able to figure out why she had those symptoms, why she had those food intolerances, why she couldn't eat the foods that she was able to eat before. After doing a microbiome test that we recommended, we found out that she was missing a lot of foundational microbes that are crucial to help us digest many parts of what we eat, many components of food. In addition, she had an infection that was causing her these symptoms of IBS. It was only after she reset her gut using a dietary change and addition of probiotics to her food was she able to get rid of this infection. And she was able to get rid of the symptoms because now her gut was populated with the ones that could help her digest food. She was also able to drink milk without having any of the symptoms. Why did this happen? Because if we again go back to evolution, wheat, grains, and cereals, lentils, these are not things that we could eat or consume in a raw form. It is only after humans learned or invented fire, they invented processing these foods, they invented converting these foods into powders, they invented soaking and processing them in a way, in a form where we could consume them. It was only after that we could start eating a lot more variety of foods. And if we talk about grains, lentils, cereals, These are the ones that are giving us the fiber that we require. Yes, fruits and vegetables have a lot of fiber, but majority of the fiber that we get comes from these grains, lentils, cereals, beans. This was not a part of the diet when we were cavemen. We have evolved to start using these, and our gut bacteria have evolved along with us to start helping us digest these. So our genetics might still be the same as they were a few million years ago, because it takes a very long time for humans to evolve, because the generation time is extremely long for humans. Every mutation that a human has is not necessarily passed down to future generations to be selected or not selected. But when we talk about bacteria, bacteria replicate within 20 or 30 minutes. And all of their progeny get almost the same DNA as the parent. So when there is any genetic mutation, it is transmitted to the progeny. If it is beneficial for those bacterial colonies, it is selected. And the selection happens very fast. We see mutations being selected within days, months. So this is how we are able to digest the foods that we were not able to digest many million years ago, because we are processing these foods and because these bacteria are helping us digest that food. If we think about fiber, our body cannot digest fiber at all. So would you say that humans do not have the enzymes to digest fiber? We should not be consuming fiber at all? No, it just means that we should have the right kind of bacteria to help us digest that fiber. And what do bacteria do with that fiber? They do something amazing. They make short chain fatty acids like acetate, butyrate, and propionate. These are required for our gut lining. These are required to keep our gut lining intact. These also help us make a lot of other metabolites that are very beneficial for our health. This includes a lot of neurotransmitters. So when we think about fiber and how it's digested, we cannot go to this argument like milk, that just because humans do not produce the enzymes to digest this, we should or should not eat a particular food. Humans have developed several processes like cooking, like sprouting, like fermenting, like making different powders. There are many different processes that we have invented. We use a combination of these. So yes, people can be gluten intolerant, people can be lactose intolerant, but we are talking about the evolution not of our DNA. We are talking about the evolution of the bacteria that live in our gut, the microbes that live in our gut. Can they digest the food that we are feeding them? If we look at populations in different geographical locations, if we compare the Hadza tribe to people living in a completely different geographical location and who are using technology. So the Hadza tribe is still a hunter-gatherer tribe. They live without technology. They live how our ancestors were living. They are one of the most well-studied tribes in terms of the gut microbiome. If we compare them to people in other geographical locations who are using technology, who have a completely different diet, who have a completely different lifestyle, for several centuries, their microbiome is also very, very different. The microbiome reflects the kind of lifestyle we have. It reflects the kind of dietary choices we have. It reflects the kind of stress we have. It reflects a lot of things that are happening in our own lives. If we talk about the current generations who are growing up on junk food, who are growing up on empty calories, their gut bacteria are extracting energy. They are extracting a high amount of calories. Because these foods lack fiber, they do not get short chain fatty acids made in their gut. They do not have proper neurotransmitters being made, and we see the consequences. It has nothing to do with human evolution. It just has a lot to do with which bacteria are being selected in the gut. It depends on the evolution of the bacteria in the gut or the other microbes in the gut. So when we talk about evolution, the time frame that we are looking at, or what we are genetically, the kind of recommendations that we give to people, especially for people who are working as coaches in the field of nutrition, of health. When we talk about human evolution, let us talk about it in a holistic sense, because we are in a symbiotic association with our microbiome. If we want to look at the timeline, let us go back even more and see what we know. So we need to update our knowledge and what we do on the evidence that we have. One example that I want to give here is that we are saying that the human civilization, as we know, is only a few thousand years old, the developed human civilization. But if we go back to the phenomenal work done by Shri Nilesh Oak, who studies Indian antiquity, he's an Indian antiquity researcher, or the work of Professor Rupa Bhati, who is also doing the same. If we look at their joint work on studying the ancient texts of India, including all of the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Surya Siddhant, do you know how the time frame is for that? So they have not only studied these texts very carefully, these ancient texts, they have also corroborated these astronomical references that defined, or all of the references that defined in these texts, with current scientific literature from the fields of hydrology, geology, archaeology, genetics, and many more, astronomy, to say the least. Looking at all of these references and comparing them with the evidence and the memories that are noted in these written texts, if we just look at the timeline in Rig Veda, the oldest memory in Rig Veda, according to the work done by Professor Rupa Bhati, is, believe it or not, 220,000 years ago. We have a written text that dates back, this ancient memory dates back to something that old. So if we think about what we know about human evolution, about since when we are consuming milk, about since when we are consuming anything that has gluten, or about all of the grains, humans have been updating their food habits over million years. And our bacteria are evolving to get the most nutrition out of it. They make vitamins, minerals, and everything else, carbohydrates, proteins. They make them more bioavailable for us. Another example I want to give you is that if we think of something that is not a part of nature, that is artificial, like plastic. Plastic was invented, or somebody made plastic in 1950s. It was a material that just could not be destroyed. So everybody expected it to remain on the planet for at least 500 years. And we still have all of the plastic that was ever made since then. We talk about plastic pollution, but guess what? In 2016, there was a wonderful publication from the University of Waterloo, where scientists have shown, they have discovered plastic eating bacteria. So yes, bacteria have evolved to degrade something that was never there in nature, which was introduced artificially. And this work was reproduced by many other scientists. There was another group from Switzerland. These researchers actually found plastic degrading bacteria, guess where? In the Arctic region. So because plastic pollution is so far spread, it is spread across the world, we find it in oceans and water bodies and landfills, we find plastic degrading bacteria because nature tries to find a way of digesting everything. So this is my urge to everybody who is working in this field. I come from a background of genetics, of microbiology, of evolutionary biology. And while I do not claim to be an expert on evolution at all, one thing I have learned from the Indian traditional knowledge systems is that we should question everything. And we should update our knowledge every time we see new evidence. We should always keep our eyes open. This is what I have learned. If you are working in this field and you think you know enough about evolution, just take a step back. Just take a step back and look at what it means to be completely human. The human body has evolved extremely beautifully because the microbes are a part of it. We live in a microbial world and we need to remember that. Yes, we need the help of these microbes to keep our memory